What is happening, people? It is Brian with EveryState.com, and welcome to the exciting part 2 of the deadlift series, where we're going to be dealing with actually picking things up. And if you were not one of the lucky individuals who got to catch part 1, you can find a link to that right here, where we talk about dealing with the setup, because if your setup isn't good, you're not going to be lifting anything heavy. Also, if you did catch it, you may want to go back and review it just to make sure we're on the same page moving forward with this video. Thanks. In this video, we're going to be dealing with your actual intention with the barbell, as well as how to perform your warm-up and work-up sets, and hopefully I'll give you some cues for the movement that will help you deadlift more weight. Alright, so I've got a lot of information covered, and I don't want the video to be too long, so I'm going to jump right into it. A good deadlift is going to start with your warm-ups. Now, a lot of people don't want to do a ton of warm-up before something heavy like a deadlift because they're afraid that's going to wear them out, but that's simply not the case. What a warm-up should be is a group of exercises that primes your central nervous system and your muscles for the work that you're about ready to ask it to do. Now, because that's the case, on my deadlift days, I always try to throw in something explosive. Sometimes it's kettlebell swings, sometimes it's kettlebell snatches. I usually do some form of jumping, whether it be a box jump or a burpee broad jump. I also like doing throws, whether it be with a keg or a medicine ball. Pretty much anything that's getting my hips moving from a hinge position to an extended position. All of the exercises mentioned are going to have your hips, your glutes, and your hamstrings loose and moving as explosively as possible, which is exactly where you want to be before you even pick up your first deadlift. You want to have a good sweat after your warm-up. If you're not there, when you go into your workup sets, you're going to be moving slow, and that is the exact opposite of what you want to do. Think about driving your car on a cold day. You don't just jump in and start redlining it. That is not going to give you the results that you're looking for. You need to give it time to warm up before you start asking a lot of performance out of it. Otherwise, things are going to break down, it's not going to perform as well, and you're probably going to get hurt. Your body is nothing more than a meat vehicle, so treat it as such. After I've done my explosive warm-up, I typically move on to a little bit of dimple deadlifts, which is basically a deadlift that is just working the top portion of the motion. All of the focus is on speed and explosiveness. Yes, you may look a little funny, but every single time that we're going for PRs in my gym, I have people do dimple deadlifts, and it always works out better than if we don't. Just give it a try, man. The weights on the dimple deadlift are always super light, usually around 30 to 40% of my 1 rep max, and the reps are always high. I try to stay 15 to 20, and if you've never done these before, you want to really focus on the explosiveness, bar speed, and flexing your glutes every single rep. More glute and hamstring explosion equals higher weights. You're welcome. Now that you've done a couple sets of the dimple deadlifts to wake up your hips, it's time to take the bar from the floor. This is super, super important because from your very first rep of deadlift, you're teaching your body what you want it to do. If you move slowly, your body is learning to move slowly. If you move quickly, your body is learning to move quickly. Science. Your intention should always be to move heavy things like they're light and light things like they're heavy. This begins with your very first workup set. When you're working up, every single rep is important, so you can't afford to be lackadaisical or lazy. Your bracing needs to be on point, your bar speed needs to be on point, your cues need to be there. You need to be treating 135 the exact same way and just as serious as if it were 800 pounds. Remember, with every single rep, you're training your body what you want it to do. You're either ingraining good reps or you're ingraining bad reps. If you're teaching your body to move slowly and with a rounded back and unbraced, that's exactly what's going to happen when you go for a PR attempt. You're not going to magically rise to the occasion just because a set means more to you or you got more amped up. Your body is always going to drop back to its training. So start from the very beginning and teach it what you expect of it. This is also why it's important to approach your setup the exact same every single time. On a PR attempt, a lot of people will try to get extra amped up and yank on the bar and stomp around and yell. That's not something they normally do, so all that your body is getting is a bunch of signals that it's not used to, so it's going to give you a different response. Some people will say that they're getting themselves all worked up to trigger some sort of sympathetic fight or flight response, and if that works for you, terrific. But for most people, when your fight or flight response kicks in, you get stupid, dumb, and you can't do fine motor skills. And deadlift, even as simple as it is, there's a lot of cues and there's a lot of things that you need to have right to use your leverages correctly. If your body is moving like a big dumb caveman, it might work to a certain level, but once you've reached that peak, you're gonna stop progressing. So you might as well be training your body to do what you expect of it. All right, so now we're going to talk about a couple cues that seem to work really well for the deadlift. All that I will warn you is get 2 or 3 of them that seem to work best for you, and those are the ones that are gonna be in your head while you're actually performing the deadlift. If you're going down a checklist of 6 or 7 things while trying to lift a bar, it's probably not gonna go as well as you're hoping. The first and probably most popular cue for the deadlift is to push the world away, don't lift the bar. A lot of times in people's heads, if they're thinking about lifting the bar, they'll end up rolling their back or they'll unravel and kind of get a cat back kind of motion like you're seeing here. But if they keep their chest high and push the world away, almost like they're performing a leg press, things seem to go better. Now, since pushing the world away is one of my personal cues, and I think it is super important, I risked my life to show you guys what I'm talking about, because I know a lot of times when someone says, push the world away or push the floor away, that it just doesn't click. So here I am standing on top of some resistance bands, almost killing myself, so that hopefully you guys can understand this cue better. Now in this example, the bar is static. It has 500 pounds on it, which is more resistance than the bands will apply. So when I initiate the cue of pushing the world away, this is exactly what it's going to look like. Now obviously in the real world, the bar is going to be moving, not my legs. However, that same force you're applying into the floor is going to make that bar come up. But if you're thinking about picking the bar up, this is not going to go as well for you. You want to be driving your legs into the floor just like you see me doing with these bands. This cue is massively important, and if you can have that epiphany moment of how to actually apply force into the ground to get the bar to rise, you're going to add pounds to your deadlift automatically. Another cue that seems to work for people is trying to wedge themselves between the barbell and the floor. So if you think back to a time in your life when you're trying to move something extremely heavy and you kept shoving on it and it just wasn't moving. And then you had that weird realization that if you turned your back to it and stuck your feet against something stable and wedged your body between, that you had a lot more force production. That's exactly what you're trying to do with this cue. I really like to use this cue in the last step of my setup when I'm pulling the slack out of the bar. I'm literally trying to think about wedging my body between the floor and the barbell, pulling that slack out, and then I explode. All right, so hopefully if you applied the first 2 cues, the bar has left the ground. Congratulations, my friend, that's the first step. Now the first thing I'm thinking as soon as that bar starts moving upward is usually, holy crap, this might actually happen. And my second thought is always accelerate the bar. You're trying to increase that bar speed as the lift goes on. Now that may not be reality, but that is what your intention should be. You broke the inertia to get the bar off the ground, now you want to get in a hurry and speed it up. It's like a race to the finish line. The faster that you're moving that bar, the less likely it is to get stuck at one of your sticking points. The momentum that you're creating by trying to accelerate the bar is going to continue throughout the entire lift. The absolute worst thing you can do is let that bar slow down. If it slows down, you die. That's it. You're done. Come on, man, you had it. All right, and finally the last cue that I'm going to cover for this video, because it's getting a little bit long, is going to be getting your hips through early. Now, I'm not talking about hitching the bar. You don't want to hitch the bar. Even though in strongman you're allowed to, powerlifting you're not, but it's not a good practice to get into because you're not in your most powerful position. Therefore, don't practice it or else it's gonna happen when you get into competition. But what I am telling you is that as soon as the bar hits the middle of your kneecap, you should be driving your hips forward as hard as possible and flexing your butt. This cue right here is exactly why we did those demo deadlifts at the beginning of the workout. As long as you perform your setup correctly, your lats should be engaged and they should be in a good position, so the sooner you can get your hips through, the better. If your lats were not engaged in the setup, you probably should have paid more attention in the last video. But let's say they're not, you're gonna have a really tough time making up that real estate and you're gonna have a hard time locking out the bar. With heavy weights, it's really tough to get your shoulders back if you gave them up earlier in the lift. Don't do that. All right, so there you go. There's the deadlift series part 2. Hopefully there were a couple cues or warm-up tips or working up set tips that you found helpful in lifting more weight on the deadlift. Good job, man. So give these tips a try, see if they work for you, but as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you did find this helpful, it would be awesome if you hit that like button, and if you're new here, I would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. But until next video, guys, thank you very much. Keep working hard, do something amazing with your lives, and I will catch up with you later in the week.